Welcome to IT Digest podcast, where you get a sneak peek into the future of enterprise tech. Each of our episodes is highly curated, where we break down cutting-edge topics, emerging trends, and the stories that shape the industry.
Hello, my name is Samarth and I work with Data Demand. I welcome you all for today's IT Digest podcast, your reliable source of the latest trends in IT, AI, fintech, and cybersecurity. We just don't report tech news. We bring you the exclusive editorial insights from the global thought leaders, reaching over 850,000 unique visitors. Get ready to be amazed, inspired, and enlightened in today's episode. Because joining us today is Briana Frank, Vice President of Product and Design for IBM Cloud. With a track record of directing products and design strategies, Briana led the team that launched IBM Cloud Kubernetes service, supporting thousands of clusters globally. She's a leader who believes in making data-driven decisions and pushing the boundaries of innovations to create powerful user experience. Beyond her role at IBM, Briana is also a patent inventor and an entrepreneur at heart, known for her dedication to mentorship and design thinking. We can't wait to learn from her today. Welcome to IT Digest, Briana.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Perfect. Briana, throughout your career at IBM, you have experienced many technological movements. Cloud computing, IoT, the 5G revolution, now the topic that everyone loves, generative AI. Companies want to embrace this generative technology as quick as possible, but there are concerns over security, compliance, and overall integrity of the models. Before we dig into specifics, I wonder if you could just set the pace for us and talk about how do you see the current state of generative AI?
So the current state of generative AI, it's been quite a couple of years in terms of the level of innovation that we've seen. And I think every company anywhere is trying to figure out how they can leverage generative AI because it's just so obvious the amount of benefit. Mm-hmm. But then how do you harness that benefit? And then how do you unleash the benefit to your entire organization? Because what I think is so interesting is that everyone, if you're hiring good, talented people, it doesn't matter their role, they can apply generative AI in really interesting, impactful ways. So how do you unleash the benefits of AI to every employee? But how do you do that in a controlled, secure, compliant way? And that's really the barrier that we've seen. Mm-hmm. And so initially when generative AI became a thing, first, it was sort of the wild, wild west. Everyone was using it. And most enterprises, at least that I saw, they kind of had to clamp down on the usage and have really strict guidelines in terms of how generative AI could be used. Mm-hmm. A lot of companies blocked all generative AI until they could kind of get a handle on it, which I think is kind of interesting. So that kind of, it almost, it set this, there's the entire organization is wanting to, they can't wait to get their hands on this technology, but they have to kind of wait and do this in the proper compliant way. So the trend or sort of the thing that I'm seeing is like now enterprises have a better handle on generative AI, and they're starting to roll this out in really, impactful ways where they can keep their data secure and compliant. Right. And that's really the biggest thing. It's like if you're in the beginning stages, if you're just using a public large language model, you don't know how your data is going to be used. Would you want to use your most private, precious IP mm-hmm. and put that out in the internet? Probably not. Would you want to, put PII that could potentially be a regulatory issue or compliance issue? That's not what you'd want to do. So companies really had to come to terms with like, how are we going to do this in a really responsible way, right. But still unleash that power and innovation.
Right. No, and I completely agree to that. When things or tech is at initial stages, it evolves over a period of time. And with too many experimentations happening, but now we are at the forefront in seeing that it is developing at the faster pace. So, what are your key considerations for enterprises planning to implement generative AI at scale? Because that's going to be a game changer.
Exactly, and I think the key thing is how do enterprises keep their data? How do they protect their data? That's the most important thing. And so we're seeing trends where, and one of the projects that I'm working on now is an ability to train your own private model so that you have complete control over your data, but you're able to train the model with your data, and then you can keep your data. It's encrypted. You can train a model, and you can take that model, run it on your laptop, run it on-prem, run it on the cloud, but that data is yours, and we can't have access. Even if we wanted to, we can't get access to your data. We would never use that for any other purpose. And so we're seeing that's a really popular trend where, enterprises really feel more comfortable if they can own their own models, they're owning the data, they're training it, and then they're keeping that private. So that's the main trend that I'm seeing. And then they feel more comfortable. Okay, we can kind of unleash the power of AI to our whole organization because we own our data, and that data stays within the bounds of our company. Mm-hmm. And so that's a major trend that we're seeing in terms of, where companies feel more comfortable and they feel like they can, attain their compliance and regulatory goals, but also, tap into that innovation and those really neat ideas that they're hearing from their employees.
Right. And you brought up the right topic of, the trust and transparency is at the forefront for, the enterprises at the AI discussions. As we delve into the capabilities and implications of generative AI, one question rises to the surface. As these technologies evolve and shape the future, how do we ensure that they operate in the ethical boundary and maintain user trust? Trust and transparency of AI models are the biggest consideration, or I would say challenges for the generative AI. Is there any how can the AI technology be governed? How do you foresee these regulatory landscape evolving, and what steps should organizations take to remain compliant?
That's an incredible question. And I think that's one of the biggest, that's really one of the foundational beliefs that we have at IBM is like, how do you do this ethically and how do you do it transparently? And one of the products we have, a Watson X governance, it kind of reminds me of a nutrition label for your AI models. And so if you were, if you're going to, buy a can of soup, you could see the nutrition label and say, okay, this has this much sodium and calories and, fat, et cetera. Watson X governance allows you to kind of see what's in your model, like what data and where's that data coming from. And you can filter on things like profanity or, there could, any type of data that doesn't feel like it's a good fit for your organization. But also you can make sure that data is compliant, and you could see if if there's a security issue or if there's a compliance drift. You can look into that model and start to take control over it, but most importantly, have transparency, because if you don't know where the data is coming from, it's really hard to, trust the output of a model. And a lot of that has to do with the quality of the data coming in. And so you want to really make sure that you're keeping tabs on that and that you feel comfortable with what's in that model.
Right. Perfect. So, everything boils down to the data management. And I believe, data management will certainly come with AI. Like, in today's enterprises, put the security of their data above everything. Protecting it from bad actors or third or fourth party risk. This is particularly important as security and compliance regulations evolve. How do you see, clients address these concerns at IBM?
Yeah, and it's a huge concern. And one cloud misconfiguration could lead into a major security vector. And so again, when we're thinking about like how do we kind of roll AI out or any application across an enterprise, we want to make sure that everything is secure and compliant. And we have a product called IBM Cloud Security and Compliance Center that gives you that visibility of your entire estate of workloads. And then you can see, oh, there's a misconfiguration here, or there's a security patch that needs to occur, or this particular workload has drifted out of compliance. And so if you can have that visibility and then you can address it in real time, that gives you a leg up so that you're not, caught by surprise. Mm-hmm. And having that visibility, we use those tools internally and we've made them available externally because we just find them so useful. And it just makes it's faster because we can see what needs to be patched immediately and we can go ahead and address it. And then that allows us to spend time innovating instead of doing a lot of the operational chores that are needed to run a large estate.
Right. Perfect. And another thing, just to add to it, from the data to from governance, there's a hot topic which requires a discussion is sustainable practices. The world is moving towards the sustainable practices, and AI has emerged a powerful driving change In fact, one of the most dynamic areas of AI application today lies in sustainability initiatives. Can you touch on what trends are you seeing in this area and how a hybrid cloud approach can support sustainable transformation?
Absolutely. And I think this is one of the really interesting things about AI. AI is really all about data. And the more data we collect, the more data we process and analyze, the more electricity or power we need to actually process that data and get these really interesting generative AI insights out of them. But again, it takes power. And so how do we manage that in the most responsible way possible? And so at IBM, we already have data centers today that are 100% renewable energy. By 2030, we have committed to having 90% of our data centers with renewable energy.
Right.
So that's one way to address it, of course. And we have things like carbon calculators that can show your carbon footprint and kind of give you some insights, so you can plan better in terms of what you're processing and when.
Right.
So that's kind of one way. But I think another way to address this is the technology itself. So I'm seeing a trend, instead of adopting the large language model that's possible, what we're seeing is a trend of smaller large language models that are very precise and more tailored to a specific use case.
Mm-hmm.
And what's neat about that is you can take a smaller, more tailored large language model, and then you can train that with your own private data. And we see that combination of the smaller large language model trained with your own data. We're seeing an accuracy rate increase to 88%. But at the same time, we're seeing the costs go down by 80%.
Right.
So it's more accurate, it's more cost effective, but actually you're using less power, which is really a great thing for the environment as well. So I really think that that's going to be a very interesting trend over the next little while here, as you see the smaller, more tailored large language models.
No, and I think what you talked about is got to do with organizations are seeking to operationalize AI at scale, and managing and deploying these complex model efficiently has become crucial, probably because they are seeing the benefits of it in the small term and the long term. And Kubernetes, with its powerful orchestration capabilities, is emerging a key tool in this space, giving its potential to streamline and scale AI. We would love to hear your insights on its role in the AI landscape. How do you see Kubernetes facilitating the deployment and scaling of AI models? And what advantages does it offer for organizations looking to leverage AI at scale?
Absolutely. Well, Kubernetes is my favorite topic. I've been a Kubernetes believer from the very beginning. And one of the very first products I built at IBM was our IKS, our IBM Kubernetes service. And Kubernetes essentially really allows you to build application in a consistent way. And consistency unlocks speed. It allows you to build things in a more resilient way. But the truth is, Kubernetes is a complicated piece of technology, and it does take a lot of skill to run it at scale in a secure, resilient way. And we're seeing a trend where, enterprises, they don't want to have to be burdened with the chores and operational chores of running Kubernetes. They want to run it as a service. So we see a lot of popularity of like our OpenShift as a service, or our serverless IBM Cloud Code Engine, which is built on OpenShift. So we see a lot of those, as a service capabilities being utilized, because no one wants to have to patch or upgrade or run Kubernetes. They just want to use it because they would just want to unlock the value.
Right.
But what I'm really seeing beyond that is not just Kubernetes. It's now it's now gotten bigger than that. It's the surrounding services. So now what we see is companies want to be able to deploy logging, monitoring, security services around Kubernetes, and they don't necessarily want to manually integrate all of those different services into Kubernetes. That's again where we see a potential misconfiguration or an issue, just like complexity, and it's time consuming. And so one of the things that we've seen as a trend is that companies want to build their own deployable architectures, where they say, all right, we want to use this Kubernetes service, which is integrated with this logging, this monitoring, this security. And then they have these approved deployable architectures that have been tested. and they can roll that out to their development teams. And then the development teams aren't having to like start from scratch. They can just, instead of spending weeks architecting a solution, they can spend hours, make some quick customization and go ahead and deploy, offloading all of that day one and day two operations. And then they could just really focus on the fun stuff, which is like innovating on top of Kubernetes, but having that consistent base where they can build off of, and they can trust that it's going to be resilient, it's going to be secure, and it's going to run the way that they expect it to.
Right. Perfect. And I believe it is time consuming, but it really helps in the longer run.
Yeah. And that's the thing is like, if you can eliminate the time consuming aspect and just consume it as a service, then you're getting the best of Kubernetes, but you're not having to, take a lot of time to run it or even install it.
Got it. Why I ask this, because, in today's digital transformation is not just a trend, but it's a necessity. CIOs are at the forefront of navigating the complexities of AI adoption. As organizations increasingly rely on AI to drive efficiency and innovation, it becomes an essential to focus on strategic priorities that align with the long-term business goals. To wrap this up, what do you think should be 2 to 3 biggest priorities for the CIOs this year who look to expand their use of AI? And what do you think we will be talking probably next year or the year after, when we meet again?
Yeah, I think there's really 2 main priorities that CIOs should have. And they're really, what's interesting is I think they're completely at odds with each other, which maybe that's a good, balance. But the first thing is creating a culture of innovation. And I think it sounds very, new agey, I think, but you really do have to have a culture where new ideas, challenging new ideas are welcomed. And there is a cultural aspect to that where you're really championing people who think about things in different ways, or say, hey, maybe we could cut this corner if we did this, if we invented this piece of technology, and really being open to new ideas. I think that's a cultural thing that you really have to institute in your organization across every discipline. So we don't want to just leave that up to the developers. We want everyone in accounting to be able to be creative and coming up with ideas. Same thing with project managers or any really role within the company. We want to be able to unleash innovation because everyone has like really interesting ideas, and like, how do you harness those ideas and really nurture them? So that's a cultural thing.
Yeah.
At the other side is governance, because you do need to have some sort of governance. And how are you going to make sure that those new ideas flourish and that you're really nurturing them, but then also have some governance around them? And so in terms of like what's a repeatable way we can execute these ideas? How do we make them secure and compliant? And then I think in the larger organizations, what you find is that there are going to be some obvious ideas that more than one person's going to have in your organization. So you might have a group over here that has a very similar idea as someone else in a whole different business unit. And so how do you combine and get those 2 ideas, like the best of both, and kind of combine those ideas without having a lot of overhead and structure, because you don't want to slow down the ideas. So I think that there are 2 things that are really at odds. Is one is like really encouraging the innovation, and 2 is this governance. But if you do it properly, it's a really great balance. I like to really stress the innovation in the beginning, the front of the process. And then once you have formed a pretty good idea, then you can start to say, all right, how are we going to govern this? What is going to be the security? Like, how would we get this through our process? Does it make sense?
True.
Then you start to kind of poke holes at it, but really give people the freedom to come up with an ideate in the beginning. Right. But I think that's kind of a practice that every company is going to have to institute, and they're very much at odds with each other. And so how do you kind of balance the 2 so that you get the best out of your organization?
True. I completely agree. It's as simple as that, being aware and understanding, what are the current affair and how you can make them better. And I believe, with that, if every organization is able to bring that thought at every level, innovations will start to flourish. It's technically, people trying to solve the problem that they face in their day-to-day life. Perfect. Thank you so much for joining us today, Briana, and sharing your insights on, ever-evolving landscape of AI and technology. Your expertise has truly enriched our discussion, and I appreciate your time and contribution. We look forward to a continuing conversation in the future.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to IT Digest. We'll be back soon with more conversations. that fuel your passion for technology and innovation.